What went through your mind as you heard the Pope had passed, this Pope had passed?
Well, the first thing, today's a day of mourning, a day of prayer, and a day of reflection on a very special individual that really led the world in so many ways. And for us as First Nations people, when he came to Canada in 2022, it was a very powerful, special moment for Indigenous peoples because the head of the church came, and he didn't have to come, but he came. And we all know that Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, it was number 58, I believe, to acknowledge the abuses, to acknowledge the hurt and the pain and the cultural devastation and everything else that happened to our people by the residential schools. And he came and he did that. And it was a very powerful moment for our people. There's no question.
I know you were very involved in all that it took to arrive at that moment. What was that experience like, and what did it tell you about this Pope specifically?
Well, we had to create a lot of partnerships, Vashi. You just don't get the Pope to come. You know, there's a lot of advocacy and relationship building with. We went to the papal nuncios in Ottawa so many times, you know, Luigi Bonazzi, so many meetings, so many church services. We built up a relationship with the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops and Monsignor Leo, you know, just to get the Pope to acknowledge everything that we wanted to do upon his visit. And I was national chief from 2014 to 2021. And all that advocacy work to lay the groundwork resulted him coming to Canada and out to Musqueam. And a lot of energy and effort. But again, the old people, the elders, the men and the women, the survivors said, this is really important for healing. This is really important for us to hear from the Pope, the highest office within the Catholic Church, to come and say and acknowledge the hurt and pain and say sorry. And that happened. So that was, again, a very, very powerful moment.
How much of that happening do you think had to do with the Pope himself? Because you will know this better than most of us, that there was resistance in the institution of the church, right? To the idea, first even of acknowledgement of wrongdoing, but then beyond that, a formal apology. How much of it actually happening, do you think, was because of who the Pope was?
Oh, no question. His strength of character, his strength of conviction to truth and to truth-telling and reconciliation. Like he was, if he was not committed to that, he would not have come, because there's a strong lobby for him not to come because of the potential legal threats against the Catholic Church if he did come and admit some sort of wrong, right? So there was a whole lobby effort against him coming, but he felt so strong. And he felt so the necessity to come to acknowledge that hurt and the pain and the suffering inflicted, to help with the healing of our people, the intergenerational trauma and all those things. He was such a brilliant man. I'd say we always say we can tell when a person's guided by our 7 teachings of truth and honesty and love and respect and courage, wisdom, humility. You can say those guided him, and that's what he showed the world, that he was guided by that, by him coming here. So he was a strong person of character. Will be greatly and sadly missed throughout the world.
I know for some survivors, I remember at the time during the visit listening to them speak about the apology and the visit, and not everybody, you know, for some it really, you know, put them back in a very difficult position where they had to relive so much of the difficulties that they lived through and the abuse that they lived through. For, I guess for others, it was, there was more immediate sort of solace taken in what the Pope was saying. I'm wondering, from, if we stand back from sort of individual reactions and look, you know, more at the idea as a whole, if you think the idea of reconciliation more generally was pushed forward by that visit, by this apology.
Well, there's no question. Like, how can one heal? How can one move forward without hearing an apology? How can you forgive without hearing that? So our people heard that. So that was part of that. So now you can move forward now and get that healing process started for individuals, for their families, for communities, for nations. It's all part of that. You have to deal with the intergenerational trauma. And again, you cannot move forward unless you hear that apology, that acknowledgement that this abuse happened, and it was a genocide of our people. people are starting to see that for what it is. And that's what's so important and powerful with him coming here to Canada. And it was part of the TRC calls to action, number 58. And again, he did not have to come, but he did. And that says a lot, and that means a lot. And now we have to move forward because there's still lots of things to get done. Like even with it wasn't just the apology, the church went on as well for the repudiation of the doctrine of discovery as an illegal racist doctrine. And that made its way into Canadian law via the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples piece of legislation that we got into place here. So we're building upon all those things now. And we have always said that nobody's going anywhere in this country. We've all got to deal with these difficult things, deal with the past, and chart a way forward together in a really good, healing, powerful way.
My final question builds off that point, because ultimately someone will replace Pope Francis. What is your message to whoever assumes the mantle, becomes the next pope, on reconciliation, specifically in the Canadian context?
Well, build on the repudiation of the doctrine of discovery and the doctrine of terra nullius. Those things support survivors, support the closing of the socioeconomic gap that exists in Canada. So there's better housing and education and healthcare for our people as well. Release of records. There's still an issue of releasing records in the church that the church has. That's still important work to get on. And repatriation of First Nations artifacts that the church has. There's still a lot of sacred pipes, a lot of sacred bundles, sacred items that are there. So there's still a lot of work to get done, no question. And whoever replaces Pope Francis still has a lot of work to do and relationship building. But he's laid the foundation and the groundwork to really build a strong bridge on between our peoples for sure. And that's what we need to keep building on going forward.
Chief Bellegarde, I will leave it there. I appreciate you sharing your insights this evening with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks again for the opportunity.